sorry, I do not wish to be unkind to the Honourable Minister of Finance. When he accuses me of not knowing about finance, I can say the same about him, but he knows very well how stadiums and fall down as an engineer. So I will not be unkind, Minister, but I will never think I would live to see the day when the Honourable Minister of Finance is agreeing with the opposition. The Minister of Finance comes today to read a story of woe, a story of the state of the economy, and of course, I don't know why he's attacking these newspapers, but sometimes they do tell us the truth, you know. So the minister tells the court very much things that he told his House today about oil and gas shortfalls and so on. Next 3 years being very challenging. But today, Minister, you have repeated or admitted what I've been saying all along. The country is bankrupt under your watch. Bankrupt under your watch. And no amount of political nonsense, as you called it, trying to teach me about refinancing and borrowing will change the facts. The facts are these, Minister. You have increased borrowing in this country from central government debt as of 2023 at $137 billion. Which is, what is it, about 60-something. When we left office, it was 76.5 billion. Ooh. So you have increased the borrowing limit, government debt, central government debt, by $61 billion under your watch. So you said people told you it's not a second budget and you must talk about this and you must talk about that, but you really did do that, you know. You talked about everything under the sun. You talked about borrowings. You talked about revenue, and I will come back to revenue in a minute, but let's see what happened under the past 9 years, Minister. Minister has a history of borrowing. I said $61 billion. Increased the borrowing limit, which is now at $137 billion. $137 billion. Minister came to Parliament repeatedly to increase the statutory borrowing limit under the Development Loans Act from $30 billion to $45 billion in December 2015. So as soon as I came into office, December 2015. $45 billion to $55 billion, again, 25th of March 2020. Again, $55 billion to $65 billion, 15th of March 2024. 3 times on this one statute to increase borrowing limits, and all that's gone. It's all spent. Minister increased the statutory borrowing limit under the External Loans Act from $15 billion to $30 billion in December 2015. Again, a second one to increase borrowing limits as soon as they came into office. Came back and increased it again from $25 billion to $45 billion, from $2 billion to $5 billion in 2017, borrowings through treasury bills. Increasing the overdraft with the central bank from 15% to 20% by the Finance Bill 2017. There is clear evidence they have not been able to create a single new revenue stream. They are living on tax, 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 borrow, borrow, borrow. So this is a state of play in the country. And Minister, I do not agree with you that refinancing doesn't mean that your debt grows. When you refinance, you're refinancing to do 2 things. One, to pay some principal repayments or payments on the principal, but you're also having to pay interest with the debt that is ongoing. So it is not true. I do not believe that refinancing does not accrue or does not result in higher debt. The truth is, it is higher. The debt is higher. So we are here today, Madam, get back down into the debate itself, to deal with motion number 1 on today's order paper. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the 4th session, 23-24, 12th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the supplementary appropriation for fiscal year 2024. Madam Speaker, when I go to look at the note from the Standing Finance Committee, at page 4 of that report, this is what it tells us. Paragraph 6, I believe it is. Yes. The committee noted that it was necessary to have a supplementation of the appropriation of resources to fund urgent and critical recurrent and capital expenditure to September 30, 2024, in areas where insufficient or no allocation was provided. The source of these additional funds is the consolidated fund. I take time, Madam, to point out that that is what the report tells us. We are going to go for $2.3 billion more, and where are we going to get that money? It is going to be from the consolidated fund. Now, in the past, I have tried to raise the issue of where are we going to get the money from to fund the additional, the supplementary. But the minister today has given us an opening. He says that we have other ways of raising revenue. But the minister has not told us a single way in which we are going to raise this $2.3 billion. So what is the consolidated fund, Madam? The Constitution tells us that the Exchequer Act speaks of it, but the Constitution gives us a little more detail at Section 112. And I raise this because if we are going to fund these expenditures as we go forward in this fiscal, then we have to know where that money is coming from, what it is. The consolidated fund is going to provide the monies. That's what the report tells us. And Section 112 of our Constitution says, all revenues or other monies raised or received by Trinidad and Tobago, not being revenues or other monies payable under the Constitution or any other law, into some other public fund established for a specific purpose unless Parliament otherwise provides, be paid into and form one consolidated fund. All revenues with the exception of those paid under any other law. That goes into consolidated fund. And then when we come here for fiscal 2024, this is the estimates of revenue. This is what goes into that consolidated fund. It is tax revenue, non-tax revenue, tax revenue, taxes on income, profits, taxes on property, taxes on goods and services, taxes on international trade, other taxes, tax revenue. Non-tax revenue, property income, other tax revenue, repayment of past lending, and then we have capital receipts, capital revenue, and then we have financing, which is borrowing and extraordinary receipts. Now, the minister mentioned, just in passing, very, very quickly, talked about other ways of raising revenue and mentioned, I think, sale of assets. But in this, in the estimates for fiscal 24, one item for sale of assets is mentioned, and I don't know if that has happened to date, if that has been part of the fiscal outlay, if it is included in the revenue the minister spoke about, but we'll come to that. So, Minister, my question to you is this. Where is the money going to come from? Now, I have a document in my hand, and I'm asking the minister if this is true. This document tells us about how the government proposes in the future to raise revenue, to fund the expenditure. And that talks about increases in the planned tax revenue earners. There is a proposal, I'm advised, and I have a document, and I'm asking if this is true, that the government intends to increase VAT. VAT. I have a document in my hand that the government, I provide a document after the sitting, Minister, so be careful. Be careful. I have the document.
So, Minister Finance, there are particular ways, if you wish to interject, Minister Finance. So please, let's abide by that. There's a particular way if you want to interject. Member for Superior.
Salam, you print the document, I sent it to you, okay? The second way they propose to raise revenue to fund expenditure is to remove some exemptions from the Income Tax Act and to increase penalties and fines on citizens. Another proposal the government has, and I have the document, they are planning to introduce presumptive taxation. Another way is to increase corporation tax and business levy. Another way, the proposal is, and I have the document, Minister, you'll get it at the end of the sitting, and tell me if it's not your document. It is a document from the Minister of Finance. I have the evidence. So be careful if you shout across the floor. I will provide the evidence for what I'm saying. Your place, Madam, tell the Minister, stop the rubbish, please. Stop the rubbish, please.
The Auditor General.
Stop it.
Just 1 minute. Member for Superior.
Yeah, well, he said I'm rubbish.
Just
take
1
it
minute.
back.
1 minute. Okay? I know you're quite seasoned and you're quite able to rise above it. All right? So don't allow yourself to be unmoved by that at all. I'd ask all members, okay, as we continue, if we
thank you
abide
very
by the
much.
standing orders, we'll all have an opportunity to speak, and we'll all maintain the level of composure and respect which we expect from each other. Member for Superior.
Thank you, Madam. I don't mean to be, I said, unkind to the Minister of Finance, but I will look at you and you have such a sweet smile, so I will smile back and talk to you, not to the Honourable Minister of Finance. They are planning to cut social programs.
Yes.
They are planning to cut social programs. Now, that I think is one of the famous IMF Article 4 report does talk about cutting back on social programs. And recently we saw the minister in the newspaper crying about CEDAP. Don't touch that CEDAP. Leave CEDAP for the people. Leave it there. Find ways to fund it. Do not touch the CEDAP. Cutting social programs. The government, I'm saying, they're borrowing money in this mid-year review to pay wages and bills from last year and year before. Some of these things have been there is recurrent expenditure. The majority of the expenditures for the 2.3 billion falls under recurrent expenditure. What does it mean? There will be nothing for development. Nothing for development. It is wages and salaries and NIS and rents and gratuities, all those things under recurrent expenditure. Now the question is this: those would have been normal expenditures. Why did you under budget in the first place? Why did you under budget? So you put less expenditures when you knew you had all these people on working on contract and short term, and I'll come back to short term employment a bit. All these things to pay, WASA bills to pay, all the other bills. So you knew it, but you did not include it. Why? Because when you came last year in this budget debate for 2024, you wanted not to reveal how large your budget deficit would be. You didn't want to reveal it. And that is why now when we come here with the budget deficit, you are now crying there and talking about Henry Hub. Henry Hub, blaming Henry Hub prices. Blaming Henry Hub, hobbling along. Collapsing the economy, hobbling along, blaming Henry Hub because the prices are not what you budgeted for. So you over-budgeted what your revenue may be predicted, and you under-budgeted for the expenditures that you had to be making in this fiscal year. So I say again, this government is broke. The government is bankrupt. There's no question about it. And the Minister of Finance has now, can you get the deficit number? The minister has, in fact, now told us what is going to happen. What is going to be, what is the gap from revenue and expenditure? And the minister told us that. On oath he went to court, and I will not go into the matters being sub judice, but it is reported in the newspaper. So we are now projecting, because you under budgeted then, we are now going to project your deficit is going to be about $10 billion. $10 billion. The fiscal deficit, new deficit, is about 5.4% of GDP. It is twice what the minister had predicted when we came here in October last year for budget 2024. It is substantially higher than the 3% international benchmark that the Minister of Finance spoke of in his budget speech. So 5.4% of GDP may reach as much as $10 billion from the initially estimated to be, initially it was to be a smaller amount, I have it here, 5.2 billion, thank you very much, 5.2 billion, and now projected to be about $9 billion, $9 billion. Based on lower prices, we expect lower revenue to be 51 billion. With this supplementation, we expect the deficit to be $9 billion. $9 billion.
Whoa.
Where are we going to find that $9 billion? I come back again. It is a borrow and tax. Property tax is coming. All these other taxes, the VAT to be increased. The borrowing limit is going to be increased from the 20% to more, 25%, I think it is. From 20% to 25%. So you're going to borrow, tax. But remember this, you cannot tax a nation into prosperity. You can never do it. You cannot tax a nation into prosperity. So you have mismanaged the economy. All the years you've come here, year after year, telling us about the, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. You know, I love that song. I really like that song.
I can see clearly now.
Anyway, moving along. I really like that
The rain
song.
has gone.
All those budget statements over the years,
Still here.
budget statements, all those. And the last one, yeah, budget statements, many promises, restoring confidence and rebuilding trust. Remember that? Has that happened? No. Budget statement 17, shaping a brighter future. Budget 18, changing the paradigm. Budget 19, turnaround. There's another one, huh? Budget statement, turnaround. Well, there's no turnaround, we're turning back. 2020, stability, strength, and growth, and so it goes on. Resetting the economy. 22, resilience in the face of global pandemic. 23, tenacity and stability, all really lovely buzzwords. And then we come to budget 2024, which is what we're discussing here now, to supplement 2024. 2024. Building capacity for diversification and growth. 9 months into the fiscal year, not a thing has happened based on those promises. So here we are, $2.3 billion later. Already how much has been spent, what has been budgeted, and no idea where that money is going to be coming from. I move along now to respond to the minister. When minister spoke about the IMF, talked of that IMF report, and I'm very surprised at the statement that this is the best economy has been in a decade. 1 decade ago, what year were we in? We were in 2014. Who was in government? We were. 10 years ago, we had 24. 10 years ago, 2014. So I think there's a misunderstanding of that IMF Article 4 report. And a spin is being put on it because the economy is not the strongest it has been in a decade. It is not. A decade ago, 2014. In 2014, we had amongst the highest GDP in our country's history. Highest GDP in our country's history. At $188.97 billion in constant dollars using World Bank data. The latest figures from the World Bank show the economy from $188.97 billion has decreased to $150.3 billion in constant dollars adjusted for inflation. So we have gone back 17 years to below 2006 levels, Madam Speaker. Every indicator has shown that life has become harsher under this government. Life has become exceedingly harsh. So the recovery and growth they're boasting about is not from 2014, 2015, a decade ago. Not then, but from COVID lockdown. So things are a bit better from the COVID lockdown, as we would expect them to be. Better than COVID is not better than since we were in government. The same is true with foreign reserves. Again, IMF says they're best we are in a decade. Don't mind, IMF says it's adequate. They do not know. In 2014, under our government, we had the highest foreign reserves ever. Highest foreign reserves in our country's history. Using central bank data again, we had 14.5 billion according to central bank data. 14.5 billion in US dollars in 2014. What is it now? It is now down to about $10.7 billion and continues to fall. The international reserves have fallen the lowest in 17 years, the lowest in 17 years, and you want to boast that we are best ever in a decade. Nothing is further from the truth. Don't ever forget. We have as well the highest foreign direct investment. We had the highest levels of employment in the labor force. A larger number of the labor force was in fact employed. So to say that we are best, yes, I'll give you the figures if you want them, if you just stay quiet for a minute. So inflation measures the rise in prices. So every positive figure for inflation means prices rise by that amount. It is cumulative. It is cumulative. When this is married to the increase shoved down, when this is married to the increases being shoved down With workers getting 4% and so on, it means a falling purchasing power of workers' salaries and therefore a falling standard of living. The fiscal deficit I've mentioned before, we take the increased expenditure to debate and the fall in revenue revealed by the TTRA affidavit of the minister. The projections by IMF appear to contradict central bank data, which shows us that we are worse off today than we were in 2014, 2015. We are worse off today. Let us look at import cover. So we talk about the foreign reserve. We said the economy is the best in a decade. Nothing is further from the truth. When we look at import cover, when we were in office, it was about 11 months, about 11 months import cover last full year we were in office. It is down to about 6.7 months. And it has consistently fallen. We look at data, it has consistently fallen. So on every economic indicator, and there are several others, we are worse off today than we were in 2014, 2015. We are worse off. People are suffering in this country. And here we come for $2.3 billion to do what? What are we going to do with it? Let's talk about that for a minute. Here, and we talk about this document. I spoke of the foreign reserves. I'll just make one more point about that before I move on to the heads, the supplementary heads. And it is this. Our reserves have fallen, seriously fallen, the foreign reserves. Fallen seriously. Minister Imbert had promised in his budget statement 2024 to set up a special facility for Forex for the SMEs. Into 9 months later into the fiscal year, nothing has been done to help those small and medium-sized businesses. So let's look at some of the expenditures. One, the Office of the Attorney General, $120 million to be increased for legal fees. My colleague, the MP for Barataria San Juan, on the last occasion in the Standing Finance Committee, asked for an update of what these monies would be, to whom the monies would be paid, and a breakdown of these monies. And the Honourable Attorney General refused to answer the question, failed and or neglected, as we say, and instead gave us some convoluted answer. Well, I'll tell you what they are, but I wouldn't give you the names. And you know what? I have to go and ask those people to give me permission to use their names. When you were paying them taxpayers' dollars, did you ask the taxpayer permission to pay them those millions of dollars? When you're using taxpayers' dollars. So here we are now coming back 120 million, 30 million for locals, and 90 million for legal foreign attorneys, foreign lawyers. I raise it here in the context of Forex. So we now have to find $90 million in foreign exchange, which we don't have. Our reserves have fallen, seriously fallen. And then we come to 90 million under the AG's office, and then maybe go to WASA. 2 items under the increases, the supplementation for public utilities under WASA is for 2 loans, 2 foreign loans. So again, millions of dollars there to be found that we have to pay in Forex, which we don't have. And I think that is worthy of note. I'll ask the minister to tell us how he intends to find a foreign exchange after you killed the goose that laid the golden egg when you shut down Petrotrin, which was the largest Forex earner in our country, the largest Forex earner in our country. And now the prices for the gas that you spoke of has dropped. Oil and gas production is down. So where are we getting revenue as a whole? And again, with respect to the Forex that will be needed. So 120 million in legal fees. And I notice under the Service Commission, and Minister, through you, Madam Speaker. Madam, can we please have a moment of your attention, please? Thank you. Yes, so I notice another head of expenditure here is under service commissions. And an item listed there for additional money is again for legal fees. So we will ask, what is it for? To whom are those fees to be paid? And through you, Madam, we serve notice that should the government fail to provide this, which they must do, it is taxpayers' money, we will take them to the courthouse to get their replies. Forex. 2 WASA loans there. So moving along, Madam Speaker, can you tell me how much time I have, please?
Ordinary time ends at 3:02, and you're entitled to 15 more minutes, which will take you to 3:17. So I can ask you now at this stage if you would wish to use the extended time, and therefore, if you so request, then you will proceed uninterruptedly till 3:17.
I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
So you will
for-
use the extended time?
I will, yes, ma'am.
Yes, please proceed.
I thank you. Thank you very much. Now, as I said, a lot of the monies are approval is being sought for supplementary allocation, appropriation, is for short-term employment. We see the Minister of Education, Minister of Local Government, and this is a matter that the Auditor General specifically included in a special section under the latest Auditor General report, noting the drastic and multi-million-dollar rise in expenditure on the short-term employment, cautioning that this method of operation was contrary to good industrial relations practice and potentially exposed the government to liability with short-term employment. So we have under education an increase that will take that appropriation to $39 million, under local government, $6.5 million. And why do we have so much short-term employment? When there's so many people crying out for jobs, over 20 million in just 2 ministries for short-term employment. And again, it is like an artificial creation of what looks like a healthy economy, because you say you're creating these jobs, but they're short-term jobs. They do not provide sustainable jobs for citizens to earn a livable wage. If we look at the unemployment figures, as I said, and again to say the economy is the best, this is another indicator, a macro indicator that can guide us as to the state of the economy. So we saw in up to 2015, the participation rate of the labor force was 60.8. We are down now into 2023, 55.5 participation rate. The short-term employment, during the Standing Finance Committee, the Minister of Education was asked about the increase in allocation to pay, as I said, short-term employment under the ministry. The Minister was asked to provide a breakdown of the numbers of people currently under short-term employment and details of the recruitment process. The Minister indicated that the Minister of Education currently has 279 short-term employees, and that the Minister said she can provide a list of short-term employees and length of time they have been employed under short-term. Have we received that? We have not received it as we come into this debate. No. When the Minister was asked about a policy that would have driven the recruitment process of the short-term employees, the Minister stated that the Minister cannot commit to providing the recruitment method used to get each of these persons. So you have how many? He said 279. Just one ministry alone, short term, and we cannot get an answer as to how they were recruited. Is it that you had to wear a Balazier tie for the interview? Yep. Is it that you were a card-carrying member of the PNM? How were they recruited? This is a very, very important question. And we go into the last 3 months of the fiscal year, about 3 months, from June into September, last 3 months, $2.3 billion more. And a lot of it is contract employment and short-term. These statements are very concerning when we look at the auditor's comments. The auditor said, and I quote, whilst audit was unaware of a policy directive under which governed recruitment of persons under short-term employment, it was noted that there were many instances of persons being kept on for continuous periods, significantly exceeding 6 months. So short-term is 6 months, but the author tells us in many instances they were kept on long after the 6 months has expired. So what is the recruitment process? And why are you holding on to them? The report says, again, in most cases it appeared these contracts were tethered to state agencies and ministries for longer than 6 months, despite the definition of short-term employment, in breach of the definition of short-term employment. Short-term expenditure, defined as short-term or revolving expenditure in specific government departments and agencies where each employee's term does not exceed 6 months. So you're in breach of your own definitions and your own policy. The note continued from the Auditor General. This is contrary to good industrial relations practices and opens up the government to liability. It is highly recommended that a policy directive be implemented in relation to this expenditure. We are calling on the government. We are going into an election year, and we are warning and calling on the government to please fix your house, put it in order, not to extend these contracts beyond the 6 months as defined. Again, if we have to go to court, no matter how much you cry crocodile tears about legal fees you have to pay, we will take you to the courthouse to stay in line with the rule of law. Government spent 71 million more on short-term workers in the last year than the year previously. So what's going to happen in this election year? The report stated for the financial year 23, 127.32 was spent on short-term employment, an increase of 31% from the previous year's expenditure. All this in contravention of proper industrial practices, all of it in breach of industrial practices. So this supplementation, through this, an additional $12 million at education and about $5 million at local government will be dedicated to the payment of short-term employees for the duration of the fiscal year. No proper recruitment process in place and in breach of proper industrial relations practices. An article in The Guardian, dated May 28 this year, quotes the PSA president, Leroy Batiste. He described the increase in money spent on hiring short-term workers as, and I quote, a continuation of the exploitation of the working population. And here we are being faced with another increase. PSA Batiste said, and I quote, "We have always said it, and I reiterate that the government has been very deliberate in trying to perpetuate these short-term contracts in so much that is all about power, the power to hire and fire persons. At the end of the day, it is a case of persons not being able to plan their lives because they have no kind of security of tenure. This is untenable, untenable." But the multi-billion-dollar revenue controversy is not the only matter that the auditor dealt with. I think this is the first time in our history that we have an Auditor General's report that has a disclaimer in it, Madam Speaker. And as far as I can remember, and I've been here a long time, this is the first time in our history, and you can find that for me, historic. First time in our history that we have an Auditor General's report that puts a disclaimer in the report itself. The government has spent monies they cannot properly account for.
Madam Speaker, point of order 48.1. This is a supplementation of appropriation matter. Has nothing to do with our auditor report for last year.
Yeah, but I would allow the member to continue. Continue, member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, the report is for the 2023 fiscal year, Madam. But if we are boasting that our economy is so good and we're doing everything with the right practices and so on, then we shouldn't be afraid of the truth. We have to expose the truth as it stands. And I'm saying this is the first time we have a report with a disclaimer in it. I'm recalling my own history in this House, and I do not recall ever seeing that. This is the first time I'm seeing a supplementation, a supplementary appropriation, which is one of the highest in our history as well. So there are many reasons why this particular matter before the House is one. Can we ask the minister? He has 45 hours, an hour. He could take as long as he likes and respond. Likes to
Minister
respond.
Finance.
Please.
Minister Finance.
Bleating.
You'll have an opportunity to respond finally. Member for Cypriot, please continue.
Thank you. Okay. I'll move along and let the minister, let his heart not be troubled too much. I turned again to under the Ministry of Education, where there is a supplementary appropriation being sought to meet the cost of school supplies and book grant to needy students of primary and secondary schools Cabinet agreed to the provision of a school supplies and book grant of 1,000 to 65,000 needy students of primary and secondary schools. 1,000 to 65,000. Now I'm seeing here the supplementation is for $20 million, and it seems that this will not satisfy the promise made, given that 65,000 needy students of these schools were targeted to benefit from this provision of 1,000. How many students will actually benefit from this grant in fiscal 2024, given that only 20 million is being requested for this particular program? What were the criteria used to determine needy students of primary and secondary schools? And again, what items have been provided to the needy students of these schools? In other words, has it already been provided? We are now going into the school vacation. So what items, if any at all, was given with respect to the promise? So 20 million we sought. School will be closing, we are in the month of June. I think school will be closing very shortly, am I not mistaken? Schools close July, early July, thank you, MP, yeah. Schools close July. And then what happens? So how many students benefited, if any? How many will benefit? And how will they be selected? What is the criteria for selection of this? Then we move along now to pay salaries. In education, $47 million to pay salaries to staff of the national schools. That's a school feeding program, madam. And to provide meals to students for the period June to September. Meals for students for the period June to September? But the schools will be closed. Whom are we feeding when the schools are closed July and August? Whom? Parasanduans, yes. Parasanduans. Who will we feed? $47 million more. Want to do what? Feed people, students, to provide meals to students for June 24 to September 2024. Question. How much? Madam, please. I want to hear she.
So, member, I don't know that she, but if the buzz is bothering you, again, and this will be my final question to members with respect to their volumes. Again, if a member cannot be silent and needs to carry on a conversation, I'll invite a member to exercise their own self-restraint, and they can leave the chamber and come back when the conversation is finished. Okay? A member for Superior, I think you just have about 7 minutes left, so please continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I did that already. Yes, madam. Talking about school feeding. How much of this 47 million extra would be paid salaries to the staff of the program to provide meals to the students, I say June to September? Why did we not budget this sum when we did the budget last year, October? And what changes occurred which now require an increase in the allocation for this item? What happened? Did we hire more people? Is it the same staff? What is it? It's to pay salaries to the staff of the National Dietary Services Limited. Did we get more staff? When we came here last October, big fat yellow books with all those estimates, did we know what the staffing would be? So I asked, did we hire additional staff? That is now requiring $47 million more, madam, in this little period between now and September. Then we come to, again, I'm talking with recurrent, another item for salaries. So we have salaries up there, National Schools Dietary. We come to Metal Industries Company Limited, National Skills Development Program, $12 million more to facilitate the payment of salaries and operational expenses, namely training materials and personal protective equipment for trainees. They agreed to this program to help under something known as STEEP, Student Enhancement Empowerment Program, from 26 to 500 routes in the sum of $3.75 million. Questions arise again. How much of that 12 million will be paid to salaries and operational expenses at MIC? What training materials and protective equipment for trainees will be procured? How has the absence of training materials and personal protective equipment for the trainees affected the administration of the National Skills Development Program? When will the trainees receive their training materials and protective equipment? Given the expansion of the MIC Youth Program, Student Enhancement, is steep from 26 to 500 youths, how much additional staff was recruited to manage the increased youth participation? How has the ministry measured the success of the STEEP program since its expansion? So these are some of the areas. Can you tell me time, please? Ministry of Health. 4 minutes. Ministry of Health, again, recurrent expenditure. Madam, 2.3 billion. Just a minute, a few millions, not a few, some millions is going to development. I'm making that point repeatedly. And all these recurrent expenses should have been anticipated, should have been known, not just anticipated, would have been known since last year. So here we come now. Rent, lease, office accommodation and storage. Did we rent something new that we now have to get $11.5 million more? We have some new renters to pay, or is it something we've been renting? The new building. The sum is required to meet a shortfall with respect to the new Ministry of Health building in accordance with the rental agreement. So didn't we know that last year? We had an agreement. We would have known what the rental would have been. Rental payment, Ministry of Health, previous head office, car park space, and so on and so on and so on. Head office, whatever. Again, didn't we know about that in October? We would have known. So what is the monthly rental fee paid for the new Ministry of Health admin building? What is the total rental, please? What is the rental for the Ministry of Health's previous head office, Park Street? What is the rental for car park space, Park Plaza, Port of Spain? What is the rental for PAHO, Pan American World Health Organization building? What is it for head office? And who is the property owner of each rented property, and how long has each property was rented by the Ministry of Health? So we move along and we will see, as I say, recurrent expenditure throughout that 2.whatever billion, at least 2 billion for recurrent. So as I close in the last few minutes that I have, I thank you and this honorable chamber for the time. I say this review is not an exercise in simple number crunching. The welfare, the lives and livelihoods of the citizens of a nation is just not about numbers. It is a vital component of the budget. It is very important to the ordinary citizens. And we know it is not just about number crunching, not about numbers. The economy is perhaps the most significant about the welfare of our people. And every single measure brought here today will directly impact lives and livelihoods, all the recurrent expenditure. And of course, we will say yes to it. We do not agree, we don't know where we're going to find the money to do it, but we have to do it because it's all that will benefit people in the country, and therefore we fully support the appropriations as revealed. I want to close that we are on a dangerous, rapid road to fostering a complete economic collapse of our economy. Never before has our country seen such wanton incompetence, corruption, and mismanagement of our economy. Where has over $500 million, trillion, we've spent in there 9 years, almost just over $500 billion, it's 530 billion, $500 billion. Where has the money gone? Have you built a school? Have you built a house? Which roads have you fixed? All our roads in total state of chaos. Have you created any jobs? Any new revenue streams? Stimulated businesses to improve country and for progress? The only concern seems to be about spend, spend, spend. And do what? Borrow, 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 and tax, tax, tax. Property tax is coming for you. 30 seconds. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker. If the problems you have this year are the same problems you had the year before, then you are not a leader. You are rather a problem on your own that must be solved. I say that to the government. I thank you very much, Madam.
Prime Minister.